There we go. Okay, brilliant. Before we hear from the readers, I'd like to introduce you to Emily Pedder, founder of the Book Edit. She'll share a few words about the Book Editors Writers Prize. So please welcome Emily.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. Great to see you all here tonight, and thanks for coming. Many publishers acknowledge that they need to do more to find diverse voices, but say that they do not know how to or are reluctant to expend the resources on doing so. That's according to a recent study by Goldsmiths University on diversity in publishing. One of the report's recommendations was that publishers and agents should invest more in strategic alliances with those who are already engaged in finding and developing talented, underrepresented writers. The Book Edit Writers Prize is the result of just such an initiative. In over a decade teaching creative writing and working as an editor, I've witnessed firsthand how important it is for emerging writers to make contacts within the industry. In setting up the Writers' Prize, my aim has been to help talented writers from underrepresented backgrounds gain access to the industry in a way that might not otherwise have been possible. Of course, when you launch a project like this, you take a risk. You can't guarantee you will reach the people you hope to reach. You can't guarantee the quality of the submissions you do receive. So we were truly humbled when the entries started to come in from far and wide, and thrilled by the sheer talent we found. Before you hear from these brilliant new writers, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Rebecca for her hard work on this project. I couldn't think of a better collaborator. Without further ado, I'll hand you back to Rebecca and to introduce our first winner of the evening. Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Emily. I'm really excited to be part of this fabulous initiative. And now let's get to the literary action. Kicking us off tonight, we've got Nish Hedge, who'll be taking us right into student life in Edinburgh. Nish is a London-based writer and graduate of the universities of Edinburgh and Melbourne. His work centres around themes of queerness, youth, and identity of immigrants, from which he draws from his own history of growing up throughout India, England, and Wales. His writing encompasses poetry, flash fiction, and short stories, and he's currently working on his first novel, Little Blasphemies. Please welcome Nish as he reads from the opening of this novel, Little Blasphemies.
August 2018. Eli Baker was depressed, and his solution was to have sex with as many strange men as he could find. Following this line of logic, he found himself in a large bedroom in Leith, playing someone else's guitar, wearing nothing but his black boxer briefs, and taking huffs from a pipe filled with crystal meth. It was an otherwise uneventful Tuesday. He strummed inexpertly, trying to match Joni Mitchell, playing from a small Bluetooth speaker in the corner. 3 knocks on the door, and a man entered. In his hands, a small tray. On the tray, cartons of fruit juice and 2 glasses. His name was something like Max or Mark or Matt. Through the window, Eli could see the Firth. Its surface, a mirror of weathered silver, was disturbed by the wind. Its foggy horizon was obscured by the spectres of faraway vessels. He heard the telltale squawks of gulls coming to feast on leftover chips. Their calls rang through him like a hammer-struck anvil, until he was numb and pliant, ready to be bent out of shape. He did not, at any point, look at the notes he was playing, nor at his companion. The man said something to him, and Eli did not pay attention, though his thoughts were diverted by nothing in particular. The indulgent glug of pouring liquids briefly accompanied his absent-minded chords. The ticking of a clock, the dampened sound of foot on carpet, and then nothing. The man with some M name was also in his underwear. A jockstrap, brightly emblazoned with bananas on the waistband that hugged a little too tightly against his chubby frame. He was covered in graying hairs everywhere except his head. He set their glasses down on the bedside table and moved in front of Eli to shut the curtains. The birds fell silent. He picked up a remote on the sill. Joni fell silent too. Eli felt his ears begin to buzz and took one final deep huff. Now that the sun's setting, it's probably for the best to stop people looking in, the man said, by way of unsolicited explanation. Let me just go and get the syringe. Eli shrugged and resumed strumming. He didn't care if anyone looked in. He stretched out his fingers towards the furthest fret he could reach, increasing the pressure of the metal strings against his fingertips until they smarted in pain. He didn't feel anything else. The man wandered over to sit next to him on the bed, nudging him to the side. Eli moved but did not stop playing. The man continued. So, how much do you want? 1, 1.5? Eli said nothing, but looked over his shoulder at the tray of drinks on the dresser. From the bedside table, the man pulled out a small vial of clear liquid and a syringe. Eli examined it closely, his hands continuing to pass across the strings and sound discordant notes. However much you're having, he finally said. He set the guitar down gently on the side of the bed. It slipped slightly, and its hollow body rang with the echo of confirmation. The man nodded, measured in the syringe 1.5 milliliters of the liquid, and brought it in front of Eli's face for inspection. Then he squirted it into a glass and topped it up with juice. Cheers, he said, his eyes brimming with anticipation. Eli smiled and nodded, before downing the concoction in one gulp. It tasted acrid against his throat and burned slightly. He grimaced and got up out of bed, pouring himself another glass of the juice. Before he could turn back towards the bed, the man was behind him, the jockstrap pushing into the small of Eli's back. Fingers slowly found their way down his body and peeled Eli's own underwear away. The two didn't put their underwear back on until 13 hours had passed, and the man whose name Eli couldn't remember had opened the curtains again. Then Eli stepped outside into the fragile morning sun, hailed a cab, and went straight to his first year English literature summer resit. We cannot, she said firmly, call them our sugar daddy vibe checks. Bailey Grant was an American who had been Eli's friend at secondary school. She had a pointy face dotted with freckles, only ever sat with her left leg crossed over right, and wore precisely 4 pieces of jewelry at all times. Today, it was 2 earrings, a necklace, and a brooch, each inlaid with pearls. As far as Eli was concerned, she was the principal spoilsport in his life, if only because she maintained high standards and Eli was mostly just high at standard. Therefore, they were best friends and had a fantastic time whenever they were together. Why not? Eli furrowed his brows and pulled his lips into a pout before tapping on his phone until, with a familiar swoosh, there was a recurring diary item in both of their calendars. Bailey pulled her own phone from the pocket of her double-breasted blazer, tapped it once with a manicured finger, and then shook her head. See, he concluded, it's official now. Bailey had flown straight in from Boston before returning to Cambridge for the new year, and Eli had promised to show her around Edinburgh. August was waning, and so the festival was growing louder and more urgent, the final gasp of fire running out of fuel. My point is, I neither have and nor do I want a sugar daddy. This is done. Eli yawned and dragged lazily from his cigarette before leaning back on his chair and resting his feet up on the seat beside him. A few tourists cast him suspicious glances from the next table, and Eli blew a smoke ring in their direction. They quickly looked away, and with his mischief completed, he returned his attention to Bailey. He lowered his shades so his eyes could probe hers, and she calmly put her sunglasses on in response. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.
Thank you so much, Nish. What a fabulous way to open the evening. Yeah, fantastic. We're going to head from sugar daddies to a near future wasteland next, as Hannah Hoare reads from her novel, Parahumanity. Hannah studied creative writing at Montgomery Community College, Maryland, and later developed her craft as part of the Collier Street Fiction Group in London and the Theatre Royal Brighton's Young Playwrights programme. Her stories include Red Planet, published by the Mechanics Institute Review, The Pumpkin and the Vampire, performed by Liars League, and Twopenny Bargain, selected for Grindstone Literary. Parahumanity is her first novel, and she has planned 2 sequels. So please welcome Hannah.
It's evening when I arrive at the cabins, but the sunlight still lingers. I can trace the desert all the way to the horizon. Having only experienced the westerly side of the mountain before, I'm not sure what I expected to find on the other side. Certainly not this, miles and miles of untouched, unsullied sand, stretching out like a blank canvas from here to a distant line where the sky meets land. The only signs of human life, 2 wooden cabins, evidently built by quite a craftsman, I might add. I couldn't have done much better myself. About a mile or so from the mountain's base. One is the size of a very small cottage. The other, smaller still, faces it and was perhaps once a workroom or storage for whoever inhabited the larger building, or even a guest house. Yes, the way it's set up, with a makeshift kitchenette in the corner by the door, a desk gently sagging beneath the tiny single window, a sun-stained refrigerator peeking from under a bookshelf. Someone could easily live here. Both buildings are equally dead. No lights on in the windows, no sounds coming from within. After lengthy consideration, I take the smaller building. The door winds gratefully open when I nudge it. As I step over the threshold, clouds of captive dust mob me, cling to my eyes, flood down my throat. I choke and claw it away. As my eyes clear, I take in the space. Somehow bigger and brighter than this had appeared through the grimy window, the furniture touched with gold from the setting sun. 8 staggering strides take me from the door to the desk. That makes it 18 feet across, I think, assuming my strides remained the same length. Good. I don't think I could stand another cage. I unpack alone. It crosses my mind as I do this that even though I've been lonely before, this is the first time in my life that I'll ever be properly alone. What happens to Katrina when she is alone? It's bound to affect my mind somehow. Perhaps a stronger, smarter new me will rise unrestrained out of the chaos and confusion. That's something to look forward to. I loosen the straps and detach the portable cryo bag from my back. My shoulders ache from the weight, but I manage to lower the bulky synthetic cube softly to the floor and then push it gently into the shadiest corner. Its whirring seems louder now in the silence of the cabin. An infant's cry. I put the rusty little chain across the splintering front door, draw the curtains across the small single window. I line up my test tubes, 26 of them, all fresh out of the packet, along the dusty wooden desk. This will be my workstation. I find other items in my lab coat pockets which I can't remember taking. I remove them one by one and line them up on the desk. 3 pens, 10 half-melted Hershey's Kisses, which I must have nabbed from the laboratory kitchen, and an old-style cassette tape. I peer at the name scribbled in ballpoint on its label. It's Alexander Buys. I throw it across the room where it shatters against the wall, the film lolling from the plastic like a dead animal's tongue. I hiss at the pieces. Food, far from my mind. I investigate the kitchenette with logical detachment. It consists of an old solar-powered eco kettle, a jar of instant coffee, and the little fridge freezer. Broken. But I think I can fix it. Of course I can fix it. There are 5 days of power left in the cryo bag. This will be plenty until I can get the proper freezer working again. It will. I close my eyes and I think the words, just in case Alexander Bai can hear me telepathically. I have to let him know that wherever he is, no matter how hard he tries to stop me, I have things under the dead cassette. Its film sticking out, mocking me. I shrug off my lab coat, throw it over the cassette, and let the dying sunlight warm my naked body for a moment. Then I make myself a cup of instant coffee. The eco kettle had a little stale water and some power left in it, and take it over to the corner of the room where I sit against the wall with my legs bunched up to my chest and focus on strong thoughts. Any emotions I'm feeling now? They're wrong. All my misery has been left on the other side of the mountain. A new, stronger animal is leaning against the wall of this cabin, head against the boards and eyes on the ceiling, waiting in the dark for the sun to rise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I think we would all like to be sitting and sipping an imaginary cup of coffee with Katrina there, becoming stronger animals. But we're going to leave her waiting for the sun, and we're going to move back in time and find ourselves in Scotland again as William Cairns reads from his novel, Uphill Struggle. William grew up in Greenock, I hope I've said that right, After leaving school at 15, he spent the next 14 years working in various blue-collar jobs. In 1994, he graduated from Glasgow University with a degree in English literature and philosophy and began working in an office before going on to become a book dealer and freelance proofreader. In 2012, he completed an MLit in creative writing at Glasgow. Please welcome William.
Thank you. Rocky was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Mind you, things weren't great in the first place. What's that saying? You can get used to anything. Big Jed handed me a book the other week about some guy that was in a Nazi concentration camp. Here, you'll like this. Anyway, some people in the camp were able to have a laugh, so it's maybe true right enough. But why should you have to get used to shite situations? I've been in posh people's houses, people I'm in school with, and you can tell they don't live the same way as us, unless they're good at not letting on. See, for some reason, my mum and dad aren't talking and we get visitors. They put on a show. But there must be families that haven't got stuff they're needing to hide. Not us Wileys, though. We're one of the families that ends up with the police sitting on our couch. He was a nice dog, Rocky, but one thing he didn't like was fighting. If he caught you at it, it'd bite you. No long back, Karen lifted the last of my Christmas sweeties and did a runner. I caught up with her in the hall and we started grappling, but then it got serious and she started slapping for real. I was ready to give her what for when Rocky, who'd been barking and standing up at my back, nipped my arse. I had to drop my trousers so Mum could clean me up. I said, Karen should be doing this. It's her fault. Rocky looked guilty, so I gave him a hug. It's all right, boy. We're the dafties. I grabbed his muzzle. Woosha, 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 boy. Okay, enough of the licking. Friday night, the door went and Rocky barked. He did deep bark that would scare the bejesus out of ones that didn't know he wasn't meaning anything by it. As Mum was opening the door, she said, keep that dafty out of the way. He can't help it, I said. He's like Jesus. He hates moneylenders. The Provy man kept one eye on Rocky and me holding his collar and used the other one to take what was owed and write it up in his book. Somebody says he lives no that far away from Doonsett. I could ask Jed what him and his soldier buddies were when they're out and about in their midnight missions that probably involve the other kind of provies. Then I'll follow you on one night, knock him flying, take his book and burn it. He was a big dafty right enough, half Alsatian, half something else, and something wrong with his brain maybe, because he ran everywhere. Even though he was old, he'd run and run. Then he'd lie in the grass across the street, where East Street used to be, before they tore half the scheme down. One time a neighbour came to the door and said, that dog of yours knocked my wee lassie over. I said, oh dear, she all right? When she said aye, I said, what are you worrying about then? Mum pulled me in the house and took over apologising. I was told, put a lead on him. So I took him for walks along the old railway. He pulled and pulled, trying to get going. So I got a run instead of taking him for a walk. When we got to the deep valley part of the line, where the viaduct used to be before the army came and blew it up, he wouldn't get down. No way, Jose. Mind you, I wasn't keen either. One night, me and Jed were out marching and reached that same bit, and he said, what are you waiting for? When I said, fuck that, he laughed and said, if the enemy was coming along the line behind us looking to end your days, you'd soon shift yourself. I get he's a soldier and all that, but does everything have to be a matter of life or death? One morning, Rocky came in our bedroom and stood at the window and barked. I said, what's your problem? Karen said, shut him up, then rolled over. Only 17 and already a dab hand at a hangover. I got up to look. Right, I said, it's snowing. I get it, just shut up for a minute. I got out of bed, got dressed, no breakfast, no nothing, because big stupid couldn't wait. We got outside and he immediately stuck his nose in the snow and walked about like he was impersonating a shovel. Then he got on his back and gave it a scratch. After that, it was my job to throw snowballs up high for him to catch. But he right then and there decided to lay them in his side. I said, hey, you, I get out of my bed for this. He didn't move. Didn't even wag his tail. Just lay there. He lay there, then he started twitching. Wee little ones. Then all of a sudden, big ones. And Elton tried to hold him, but there was no holding him. After a minute, he stopped and didn't move. His tongue was sticking out, and there was blood on it. Rocky? Rocky, you okay, boy? I stood up and shouted, Dad, over and over again, until he came to the window and said, for God's sake, Frank, what's the matter with you at this time in the morning? I said, it's Rocky, Then I started crying, even harder than the first day Mum took me to school and left me there. That's how bad it was. Because, okay, you can think, maybe my sister loves me, and my mum and dad, but you can't know, because people can act a thing. But Rocky's mad dog love was a fact of life. And with him no there to use it on me, to keep me under control, that's when things all went to hell. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, William. I mean, I just love Rocky. I'm sure everyone out there does. And it's, you know, you spend the whole thing having the giggles, and then he dies, and it's horrible. So thank you for sharing. We could all do with a good old Rocky in our lives, I think. We're going to delve into the mysteries of birth and the ravages of passing time next, as we listen to Mitch Moroney read from her novel, Ink, Blood, Brick, Bone. Mitch was born in Hong Kong, where she lived until she was 7. Her father was British and her mother is Eurasian. Her father retired and then moved to Portugal, then England. She was sent to boarding school and then afterwards trained as an artist in London. She's written about art and music, but started writing imaginatively only very recently. Please welcome Mitch as she reads from Ink, Blood, Brick, Bone.
Chapter 1, Conception. Amongst the blizzards and shoals and swarms of galaxies and nebulae and cold dead planets and hot birthing stars, a tiny pinprick is suspended. A blue pinprick, orbiting in the silent dark, tucked in a quiet backwater of the teeming universe, away from the roaring silence of the creative furnace. A blue pearl, unremarkable except for its colour. Surprisingly, there are few blue pinpricks in this galaxy. The surface of the pearl is mostly covered in water, with here and there thin layers of mould. Creeping on its surface are countless infinitesimal creatures in constant motion. It is a planet mired in chaos and fury. It is a planet at war. We spiral down through the freezing layers, through the orbits of its fellow planets and its own small moon, down through the banks of clouds, down through the turbulent night. Said moon is full in the north tonight, a bomber's moon, lighting a world in ruin. We are standing on the pavement of a little cobbled street. There are craters, collapsed walls and charred stumps, though luck was on the side of the street tonight and the bombs dropped on the far side of town. Here, all is quiet. The little brick-built terraces are lightless, their windows blacked out. Sirens begin to shriek in the night. The all clear. Returning to their beds, the inhabitants emerge rat-like from their underground lairs, scurrying over cobbles, tripping and cursing in the dark. There is a chink of light from one upstairs window. Tut, the air raid warden will be on at them again if they're not careful. Beyond the tatty curtain is a small room with an old brass bed, its mattress sagging in the middle. Together in bed, lit by the guttering light of a single candle, are Georgie and Dolly, clutching each other tight. A microcosm of love and comfort in the maelstrom of the night. They do not know it yet, but they've just made Jimmy. He's a minuscule blob of jelly and dividing cells, a pinprick, not yet visible to the naked eye, suspended safe and sound in the dark universe of Dolly's uterus. He will grow there undisturbed. It will be an easy birth. She is healthy and has a talent for happiness. She will breeze through her pregnancy, war or no war, and by a miracle, Jimmy will survive. But the bad fairies that lurk in oviducts and bone marrow, stem cells and sperm have already been. They have laid their dark curses and fled into the night, screaming with wild laughter. Safe in her lover's arms, Dolly dreams on. Chapter 2, For Sale. It is a perfectly ordinary Victorian house in a part of Chelsea known as World's End. Mid-terrace, stuccoed, situated in a tree-lined street, and only a short walk from the reaches of the dark river immortalised by Whistler, where, tactfully ignoring the bodies of drowned prostitutes and dead dogs, he transformed the damps and fogs of the Victorian Thames into dreamlike Japanese nocturnes. Nearby, Lots Road Power Station looms. In its heyday, it powered the London Underground. According to the developer's brochure, it has been elevated to the centrepiece of a fashionable new waterfront neighbourhood in the biggest change for Chelsea in living memory. The house is up for sale. Guide price, £3 million. The cheaper end of the market for Chelsea property. The owners are something in the city and are moving on. To New York, Frankfurt perhaps, money nomads, forever chasing the next deal. They had bought the house, unmodernised and intact, the last in the row. The seller had been nothing in the city. Snapped up and gutted, any reminders of its history are beyond recall, and all clues to its shabbier past erased. The pristine interior is tastefully arranged in shades of grey and white. Fireplaces have been ripped out and heating rises from under floors of engineered oak and shiny porcelain tiles. 2 spacious reception rooms are devoid of books, except for a pile of modish tomes on architecture, fashion and photography, artfully placed. No pictures on the walls, but mirrors everywhere. Circular mirrors the size of cartwheels in each bathroom. In the master bedroom suite are more mirrors and a dressing room, floor to ceiling with ranks of designer heels and matching handbags. An entire wall of the home cinema is taken up with a convex mirror. A gilded 19th century pier glass is the focal point of the mausoleum-like kitchen. Designed as a symphony in white, all is matte, spotless and clinical. The only vestige of life? A single deathly pale peony, milky white to match marmoreal worktops and displayed in a laboratory beaker. There is a central workstation the size and shape of a Gothic tomb. No cooking ever takes place, and an American-sized fridge is empty except for a stack of vintage Bollinger. Glass doors slide to what is cunningly listed as an outdoor space. It cannot, by any stretch of the imagination, even by an estate agent, be described as a garden. Potted acers, bamboo, and an ivy-covered privacy screen shuts out most of the sunlight. No bored child has ever lounged here on long summer afternoons. Smothered under massive granite slabs lie the shredded remains of a garden. The mangled roots of roses, apple trees and magnolia repose in a shared grave. Where foxgloves had once nodded in the shade, subtropical plants stand rigidly to attention. Rotting carcasses lie buried in rubble. Tulips, sweet-scented narcissi and iris, all suffocated by implacable concrete. There had once been a vegetable patch, runner beans curling up wigwams of bamboo, and brick paths lined with thyme and rosemary. Gooseberry bushes, city birds nesting in hawthorn hedging. In the flower beds, sucked by summer's heat, close-planted lavender and tea rose breathe the living potpourri. All gone. No breeze disturbs the stiff, glaucous leaves in the gloomy, sophisticated outdoor box. It could be anywhere in the world, in a house that has lost its memory.
Thank you so much, Mitch. That was, I think we're all keen to unravel the mystery of that house and what was there in its past. We're going to go somewhere totally different again now, or we're going to 1970s Croydon with Shane Lowe, who'll be reading from his novel, Slanted Eye. Shane lives with his family in the Midlands and works in the television business. He loves to read, write, dream and travel. He likes walking, cycling, football and tennis. He's always enjoyed writing poetry and scripts, but the writing of novels is his newfound passion. So please welcome Shane as he reads from Slanted Eye.
Dad always got up at 6 to go down and sort the newspapers out before we opened at 7. Mum would drop me at Woodside Infant School, then join him in the shop. Mum was always late collecting me because they were so busy. I loved the buzz of our shop, the constant stream of people in and out for their newspapers and magazines, their chocolate and sweets, their cigarettes and greeting cards. Sometimes I would sit in the window watching passers-by, or hang with Sheba, our Alsatian, who dozed beneath the racks of wrapping paper. Mum and Dad were chatty with the customers, and I always thought Dad seemed happily distracted when he was working, serving behind the till, sorting stock, rearranging the displays, counting the day's takings. He was different when the shop was closed. He treated me like he treated the dog. If he was in a good mood, he would stroke her fur and pull her ears. Likewise, he would ruffle my hair and brush my nose with his sovereign ringed fist, flash me his hard grin. But when I was in trouble, he would clench his jaw and point down to the floor in front of him. Get over here. And I would tremble towards him. At 25, with his dark curly hair, his thick sideburns, his deep-set eyes and small flat lips, he was the scariest thing in my life. We went shopping one night in a supermarket called Carrefour. They left me outside the entrance where I started playing with another kid. My new friend climbed onto a shopping trolley. I pushed and swung it around. Then all of a sudden, there was a Ford Capri. I tried to pull the trolley back, but momentum carried it into the car's door. From nowhere, this tall bronze man in a red roll neck and white shorts knelt down and asked us where our mummies and daddies were. We pointed into the busy store. He and his girlfriend waited with us until our parents came out. It was the first time I ever wanted them to take longer, hoping the man might give up and go. My arms were shaking. I felt like a criminal under arrest. The other boy's parents came out first, and when the man showed them the scratched door, the boy's mum huffed at her son. What have you done? Say sorry to the man. Just as this was happening, my mum and dad came out. Dad looked at me and scowled up at the man through his square, steel-rimmed glasses. What's going on? I'm afraid your son has damaged my car. The man bent down and pointed to the scratch, then straightened again. He reminded me of the Green Cross code man on the TV advert. Dad wasn't much taller than Mum, but he was stocky. Dad didn't look at the man's car. He just shook his head, the way someone does when they've been standing in a queue a long time and then decide that they've had enough. He grabbed me, jerked his head at Mum, and we walked. Hey, said the guy with the long tanned legs. We kept walking. You scratched my door, the man insisted. Go to hell, said Dad. Excuse me? Daddy turned around, released my hand, widened his stance, and clenched his fist. I said, fuck off. The other boy's parents stared at the ground. The bangles around the fat mum's wrist jangled as she fumbled in her handbag for pen and paper to write down her details. Get in the car, said Dad. He started up our old Jag, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of superiority, couldn't help basking in the power of my dad's aggression. While the other boy was still standing near the Ford Capri with his head hung in shame, we were driving away because we couldn't care less. Dad stuck his foot down and with one hand on the wheel, he started turning around and hitting me with the other. I leaned back and raised my arm. I had hoped, due to the shenanigans with the man, the time it took to walk to the car, the fact that he was now driving and it seemed like ages ago since I'd done the naughty deed, that he might forget to hit me. But I was wrong. On our way home, I told Mum I felt sick. Dad swore. It wasn't only his fast driving, it was the queasy odor of the upholstery and the engine fumes. I'd thrown up all over our back seat once and ever since developed a severe phobia of being sick. I found it helped to stick my head out the window as we drove along. I caught Dad's black eyes in the mirror. He would only let my window down an inch. I reached up my nose to the gap and sniffed at the air like a desperate dog. When Dad was angry, Mum always went very quiet, like her mind had left her body. One mealtime, I'd eaten all my beef stew except for this small lump of gristle. Eat it, he said. It's all right, said Mum. I was about to get down when Dad grabbed Mum by the throat and pinned her up against the wall. Don't ever come between me and him again, understand? I stared at them both. My mouth hung open. I was 5 years old, and she never intervened again. Eat it down like a man, he snarled. I pushed it into my mouth. It was disgustingly chewy. I gagged, tried not to cry, and he sent me to bed with it rolling around my back molars. Sometimes he sent me straight to bed when I got home from school, and I would lay there in the daylight waiting for Mum to sneak me up a Mars bar for dinner. I began to understand why she told me he wasn't my real father. It explained the way he treated me. But I didn't understand how it explained the way he treated her. All I knew was I had to keep this secret locked deep and tight. I knew that he would kill her if he found out that she had told me. He would kill me too. Killing us was something he frequently threatened to do. He is my dad, and I am not half Chinese. This was the untrue truth that would keep us safe.
Oh, thank you so much, Shane. What a revelation to end on. And it's such a dramatic piece with that horrible little gristle that sticks in your mind as well as in the teeth. Thank you so much. We are going to stay in London now, but we'll be sweeping the streets instead, as we hear from Bren Gosling, who'll be reading from his novel, The Street Sweeper. Bren was raised on a Norwich Council estate. His novel, The Street Sweeper, was shortlisted for the Exeter Novel Prize and the Luke Bittmead Award. It also won the 2021 Novel London Literary Prize. So maybe this is your year. This is your year, Bren. Alumnus of the Novel Studio, his stories and Flash appear in the London Short Story Prize and Brighton Prize anthologies, amongst others. Bren's play Proud, inspired by The Street Sweeper, will be produced at the King's Head Theatre in spring 2022. Please welcome Bren as he reads from The Street Sweeper.
London, Friday the 8th of February 2002. What does he know? What does Amir know for certain? He knows he is squirming like an earthworm caught above ground, and that this moulded chair he has been sitting in for over 35 minutes is making the back of his legs go numb. Sometimes he can't remember his own name. The female receptionist's voice calls out a name, not Hajik. The woman sitting next to him gets up and begins walking. His eyes follow her bent over form. The woman makes slow progress, holding onto her stick as if it's her closest confidant. He catches the receptionist's eye. "You're next," she says. The tablets the doctor gave him a week ago have made no difference. He knows he must go back to work. That's all he knows. His head falls towards his lap. Through one half-opened eye, Amir Hajik notices a food stain on his tracksuit bottoms, and then, just at the knee, scorch marks made by dropped cigarette ash. It dawns on him that he hasn't changed his clothes since his last visit here. not even his underwear. He attempts to sit up straight, half curious, half disgusted, wondering what he must smell like. He can no longer recognize himself. When he was 14 and a coffee runner for customers of Mr. Halili's shop in Mitrovica, Kosovo, he never dreamed of a future like this, that at 21, he'd be living in London and working as a Walthamstow street sweeper, that he'd be earning a living doing something only men or gypsies did for peanut money. Back then, he was somebody different. His world was a different place. Everything changed. The roar of heavy traffic hits him as he opens the van door and jumps down. Hoe Street is a rude awakening after the warm and silent interior of the van. It's a cold morning, and he really would prefer not to have to get out. The height of morning rush hour, traffic and red double-deckers are swarming over the Baker's Arms junction like angry bees around a hive. He thinks about later, the shower he'll have at the leisure centre after his gym workout. He'll go to the internet cafe, the one behind the tube station, only a 15-minute walk from the bedsit. Elias, the Algerian, lets him have a terminal for free if things are quiet. Late on a Monday night in Walthamstow, things usually are. The traffic remains heavy and slow moving, emitting a low drone, a strange orchestration of engines turning over. He is sure someone has run ahead of him, deliberately dropping small litter piles at every few paces. By the time he reaches First Avenue, just before the pedestrian crossing, cars, buses and lorries are at a standstill. Somehow he's managed to lose one of his gloves. Every few minutes he has to warm the uncovered hand to keep it from freezing by putting it inside his jacket. He covers his ears with the headphones again and presses the play button of the Discman, hoping Shakira will provide the necessary distraction to get him through the morning. The noise of car horns honking above the din greets him when he removes the headset. He mops his brow. In spite of the cold weather, sweat is oozing from his forehead. He takes the broad bristled broom from its resting clip on the back of the barrow, brings the brush head down hard onto the pavement and begins to sweep. Inside his mouth, the foul taste has resurfaced. A white truck belting techno music stops at the curb and the driver stares at him before winding down the window and aiming a smouldering cigarette end at his feet. Amir clenches his jaw. He's so primed and ready for military action, even after all this time, even without an AK-47 or a hand grenade strapped to the belt of his trousers. He wants to lash out, but knows if he does, he won't be able to stop. The rage will overtake him and he'll end up doing something he'll regret. He half closes his eyes and pushes the broom forward, then back, allowing the steady repetition to lull the anger burning inside. But even when the truck moves on, his heart continues to pound, pressuring great bursts of blood into the veins of his neck. A bead of sweat falls from his forehead onto his cheek, hitting it like a slap. The broom strikes something big, which gives more resistance than usual. He stands upright, paying proper attention for the first time. A large carrier bag. Whatever's inside is peeping out the top, the color of bright tomato skin. He steps forward and bends down, inspecting the bag's contents, but shrinks back as if to avoid touching a deadly poison. He clamps his eyes shut, pleading with himself. Don't let it be, not that, no, again. His lids peel back regardless, like he's being forced to endure an ophthalmic examination. Inside that bag, he's had sight of something which makes him feel he's been made to eat hot stones. A pair of discarded red sandals, women's sandals. And the shoe which is uppermost and now in full view has the strap missing, exactly like. External noises fade away, and he is left only with the sounds of his own labored breathing and thumping heart. He's back in time, back in Kosovo with his platoon on that last reckless reprisal mission. His legs have become cement-filled. In rapid succession, images flash through his mind. A deep ravine, the smell of burning, a silence broken by the cawing of black crows crossing a blue sky, and the terrible screams of that woman, leg blown off and pitched up on a rocky slope, a dancer's leg with red sandals still attached and with the strap missing. All self-control deserts him. He retches and throws up, partially digested egg roll in a coffee-coloured puke. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Bren. I did warn you all that, you know, you've been moved this evening, and you probably are going to, you know, it would be good if we could all take some time to recover from some of these things. So you're lucky you'll be able to read all of this again when you get the anthology. Thank you so much. Well, hopefully my waffling for a minute will allow you to recover from Amir's trauma. We're going to go somewhere very different now, into the future, as Kay Inkle reads from her novel Tipping Point. Kay lives in Liverpool with her feline companions Lovely and Precious. She works for a disabled people's organisation, writes fiction, mostly cli-fi and speculative, and teaches Pilates. She's published 3 short stories this year, The Virgin Mothers, Rainforest Pamper Day, 10 Years On, and she previously had a short story broadcast on Irish National Radio. She is a disability rights activist, environmentalist, vegan, swimmer, and hand cyclist. Just going to turn the recording off for Kay's reading, but as I'm doing that, please welcome Kay. There we go, the recording is back. We are about to, amazingly, hear from our last writer of the night, Malachi McIntosh. He'll be taking us right into a dramatic crash as he reads from his novel Fame. Malachi was born in Birmingham, England, but raised in the United States. He writes fiction and non-fiction and has been published in Under the Radar, Flash, Broadcast, the Caribbean Review of Books, The Guardian, The Independent, and Comma Press's Book of Birmingham. His stories have been shortlisted for the Gallybeggar Short Story Competition, long-listed for the Guardian 4th Estate Bain Prize, and commissioned by the National Trust and Lincoln University. Please welcome Malachi as he reads from his novel, Fame.
Boom. The crash rattles her house, knocks flat all the ornaments around her television set, shifts her curtains, makes even the air for a moment blur. Her first thought after the sound cracks is blank. Before she even knows what's happening, she's up at her windowsill, cranking flat her front blinds to stare across her front lawn to see a single car in its back and burning black smoke. The road outside is as vacant as always, just an infinite strip of asphalt headed west one way and east the other, with nothing out here to make you slip or skid, but still, somehow, a flipped over car through her fence, on fire. What the fuck? She turns to Jake, so tired in the middle of the days now that the fast crack boom of the car crash only made him raise his tail and the whisks of his eyebrows, bark once, then set everything back down. Jake, she says. Shit, she says. There's nobody out here for miles, just the two of them, this house. I need to, she says, and pushes back her hair. Okay, Mary, she says, still watching the smoke, the flames. All right, okay, go. She runs. First to her couch. Her forearm slid deep underneath into the tumbleweeds of dust, dirt, and hair there, but nothing. Then into her kitchen, the chill of cold tile on bare feet making a weird contrast with the smoke she sees still streaming up from the car in the street. She checks her bedroom next, nothing. Her closet, nothing. A pile of dirty laundry she has to do, a single flip-flop on its side, old boxes with worn high heels that are no help to anybody right now, and fuck it, she thinks, and runs. From her bedroom, past her couch, past Jake, and out the front door, into air. The car burns like an apocalypse in front of her at the edge of yards of lawn. Midday sun sears, scrubland biting at her soles, and then she's close, just a few steps away, and stops. The car is one of those new smooth roofs, plastic-looking compacts on its back, half on and half off the road. Smoke and fire wail around the front axle. Below that, somebody's pale arm, palm up with blood on it, and screams. Screams she hadn't heard before, but hears now so loud it's like she's screaming them herself. Okay, she says. I'm gonna help you, she yells and drops low, coughing. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna get you all out. It's almost impossible to see anything or breathe, so she goes even lower, coughing, her chin just an inch above the earth. And sitting there, right in front of her, the brown eyes wide and shaking, is a little boy strapped upside down in a car seat. What must be his mom up front, the one reaching her broken arm. Something like a man ran forward next to her, and it's so hard to see and breathe. All this endless smoke like hellfire all around them. Is it even a man? Are you all right? Mary yells. But it's obvious that they're not. Half the driver's body is punched through the dashboard. The woman's noises have stopped. I'm gonna get you all out, she yells as the arm softens, still reaching for something it can't quite touch. My name's Mary, she says, just to say something else. And I'm gonna get you all out. You're all gonna be fine. You're all gonna be fine. So just wait a second. As she talks, she jogs herself forward like a worm through the dirt, slips her hands inside the window to unbuckle the girl. A little girl, not a little boy, maybe Indian, and Mary has her now. She has her out, soft limbs untangled into her arms. She slides back and back with the girl into the fire, smoke thick and everywhere until they're fully clear. And then Mary stands and then she runs. A beautiful little girl, maybe about 5 or 6 years old, in her arms, and Mary's running. She gets maybe 100 feet or so away from the wreck, sucks in a breath, thinks just 2 more trips in, and then the car explodes. Not a series of perfect circles expanding outward in overlapping bright colors. No slow motion, just a loud noise, shorter and sharper than the earlier crack boom, and pieces flying, and heat, and even more flames. The weight of the air taking her breath, pushing her down, but still, caught in her arms, is a little girl coughing. But Mary isn't thinking anymore. The body of the car is a pile of fire more or less on her front step. Nobody's anywhere near here, and this little girl's coughing in her eyes. She has dark eyes, and Mary's heart is wild. She leaves the girl, eases her over onto her side, and stands up, tender, sucks in another breath and runs to the wreck, but can't get close enough to it because of the fire, the heat of it worse than anything she's ever felt. Her body steps her back, and then the little girl's crying behind her, and Jake comes forward from nowhere and barks an old man's bark that tires him out, and he slumps down. All fire, all crying, all sounds, and Mary has no breath. She wants to breathe again, but has no breath. And then, turning toward the house, away from the hellfire, to dial 911, to get help, her chest clenches, her legs go limp, and she goes down. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, thank you so much, Malachi. What an amazing reading to end on. And as the arm goes soft, oh my gosh, that's that description of her arm as she's reaching out to the child. Yeah, thanks for that. It's going to haunt my nightmares. Anyway, that's such a fabulously dramatic ending to what I'm sure you will all agree has been an absolutely fantastic evening of reading from an incredibly talented group. I would really like to thank all of the readers for making our job, firstly, so easy in sending in such fabulous work to the competition and in reading so well. I'd like to thank Emily Pedder for coming up with this brilliant idea and bringing talent in front of you all. Finally, thank you for all coming and listening. The anthology of readings will be available on the website tomorrow, and I think you're going to be sent it as well. We sincerely hope that you've heard something that piques your interest, and do keep us posted with any developments, because we think these writers are fabulous, and we really hope you do too. So yeah, thank you to everyone, and good night. Thanks everyone. You've all been brilliant.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I'm going to stop the recording now, just so, yeah.